Welcome to the Love What You Do podcast. I'm Kelly Dugan, former HR executive turned career coach, and I'm here each episode sharing stories and strategies to help you build a career you love. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am so excited to have our guest, Rob Levin, joining me here today. Rob, welcome to the podcast. Rob, you are a marketing consultant. You and I had the opportunity to meet during our time at WWE, but you have worked at so many amazing companies like Priceline, GE, Nickelodeon. We're going to talk all about it. But you also just started a very exciting project, which is you are the author of the best interview book ever. So you've got a lot to share with us on the podcast today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So if you've listened to any of our episodes before, we generally start most of our guest podcasts the same way, which is a little bit of an overview of your career path, because it helps our listeners to understand all of the different opportunities that are out there. I would love to hear, I know a little bit already, but I would love for our listeners to hear, take us through the SparkNotes version of where you started your career till today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. So I've been told many times that my career path has been very interesting, which I always hope is a positive thing. But I think one of the lessons for the people listening out there is that a career path can be very winding and very different. And it just depends on circumstance, luck, and hard work. So graduated college, joined the Marine Corps. I was in for 7 years. And that was really sparked by just luck. I happened to meet somebody who had just come back from Marine Corps officer training, basic training, and the way he described that experience, it sounded like the hardest possible thing that anybody could do. I mean, the things that he told me he did in training, I remember thinking to myself, no human being can do physically and mentally do the things that he's telling me he did. There's no way. So I literally signed up the next day. I mean, I had hair down to the middle of my back. I had piercings. I had all sorts of reasons why I should not have been accepted. But
oh my gosh, Rob, I had no idea that is such a different profile than the Rob that I met a few years back.
Oh, absolutely. The Marine Corps changes you. Yes, absolutely. But I've always been a bit of a metalhead, and I very much looked the part when I was in college. And yeah, so the Marine Corps set me straight, so to speak. I'm still a metalhead, but I look very professional.
We just switched shorter hair.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so during the Marine Corps, I was in for 7 years, and I actually ended up getting hurt, and so I had to make a decision that I wasn't really ready for, right? Because I wasn't planning on getting injured, obviously. So I said, okay, what does my career look like now? And so the first job that I got out of the military was actually in finance, of all things, just because I needed a job. And so I took that year in a finance role, and I said, all right, what do I really want to do with my life? And during my MBA, I took my first marketing class. This is going to sound very silly, but I didn't know marketing was a thing. I didn't know it was a career choice. And so just got lucky, took this marketing class. And I remember calling my wife on the way home from this MBA class. And I said, sweetie, like, I feel like I've just been struck by lightning. This is exactly what I want to do with my life. And so I started looking for marketing jobs, ended up getting a job at Priceline. And I remember thinking after I got the offer, I don't even know what SEO stands for, or PPC. Like, I had to look up all these acronyms that are so common in marketing now. And I said, okay, the best way for me to learn is to put some skin in the game. Very long story short, went to the library, taught myself how to code, taught myself marketing concepts, built a website, started selling things. And that's how I got my hands on learning in marketing. So from Priceline, like you said, just went to GE, WWE, Nickelodeon, startups, private equity, and now consulting as a fractional chief marketing officer.
Wow. And not many people get that like lightning bulb moment of this is what I want to do with my life. What was it about marketing that made you feel that way?
So what I realized I loved then, and what I continue to love now, is that marketing allows me to exercise two different parts of my brain that I really love. So there is the heavily analytical side, number one, right? Where, uh, for a lot of people, staring at an Excel spreadsheet and playing with numbers for 2 hours sounds horrible. To me, I get excited,
Yeah.
right? So I was actually just on a meeting with a client yesterday where we were talking about multiple linear regression modeling, and that's a handful to say, and perhaps sounds like a total bore for some people. I got so excited. I was like, oh, I can't wait to play with these p values and this and that and the other, and uh, uh, because it leads to the reason why I love it is because it leads to these insights that I can come up with to help the company spend more wisely, right? So, our Facebook platform might say, hey, you're getting X number of conversions at this cost per acquisition, but the regression modeling will tell you what the truth actually is because it's using this sophisticated formula to figure out what the numbers really mean. So the lightning bolt comes from exercising that analytical side that I love, but also getting those insights and then figuring out what do I do about it, right? What's that creative side? How do I take that statistical data and now create an Instagram campaign that's going to get more people to convert at a more efficient rate? Things like that. So I think part of what drew me to the Marine Corps and what I love about marketing is I love a challenge, right? And so when a client comes to me or a business comes to me and they say, hey, our cost per acquisition is this, we need it to be half that. My initial thought is, I don't know how to do that. That's a huge number, right? And then a second later, I get excited by that challenge, and I think, all right, I'm gonna figure it out. Here we go. Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anybody who hears a story about the Marine Corps and thinks, how could any human do that? And immediately says, that's what's convinced me to sign up. I think that's all the evidence you need that you love a challenge, Rob.
That's it.
I love that. And
Yeah, it was
honestly,
fun.
my experience in marketing just comes from being a small business owner and doing what I call like baby marketing, right? I didn't realize all of the analytics that go into marketing until I started to get into this role and understand that it really is a perfect place for a creatively minded and an analytically minded person.
Oh
There's
yeah.
so much there. So we talked a little bit about your career progression and all of these really big name organizations that you've had a chance to work in, and you've had to interview to get into all of those
Oh yeah.
different incredible organizations, which brings us to your interviewing book. Uh, why don't you share with us a little bit about how that book came to be and how it was built over your career?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm excited to talk about it because it's already helped a lot of people, and I'm excited for more people to hear about it. So the origin story for the book is when I left the Marine Corps. So what the military does is they have a class, a separation class, and it is essentially how to be a civilian, right? Because if all you've known is the military, the civilian world is very very different from that, and there's a prep that's required to transition smoothly. And in that class, one of the instructors told us, hey, one of the best ways to succeed in an interview is to try to anticipate the questions that are going to be asked and then spend time preparing a perfect answer for those questions. And I said, okay, let me try that, right? And so once I made my document, I customized it for the roles that I was interviewing for, and I just I mean at the time I think I wrote them out. I didn't even type them up and print them out. Like I wrote all this out. Shows you how long ago this was. But so I wrote it out, and then I just studied my notes, and I kept going over it, and I kept practicing, and I kept revising. And at the time I might have had 5 to 10 interview questions that I expected to get, and I ended up nailing every interview. So I had to remember exactly how many companies I interviewed with, but I got an offer from every single one. And
Wow.
so I said, okay, this process is working for me. And so throughout the rest of my career for 20 plus years of interviewing, anytime I got a question that during an interview that was not in my document, I added it to my document after the interview, and I thought about and wrote out a terrific answer. My process then evolved to once I got a new opportunity, I would anticipate more questions, keep adding questions and answers to this document. This document ended up being, I think it was like 75 pages of questions and answers and prep for these interviews. And so, I mean, the bottom line is I've gotten an offer from almost every single interview process I've ever gone through in the last 25 years. And it's all because of that prep from this document. The final part of this is I've been giving that document away, right? Anytime I see somebody on LinkedIn that says, "Hey, I'm looking," or I'm out of work, I DM them, "Hey, I'll add you to this Google Doc and just shoot me your email." Somebody eventually came back to me and said, "Hey, this is amazing, and it got me this job. You should turn this into a book." And I'd never thought of it, and I said, "Yeah, I should turn this into a book." So so I took that document, and what I did was I added to each question an explanation for why the answer I have is a good one, and then a framework for how a reader can create their own answer and customize it to the role, to the industry, to the company, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, that's the book. And so, I call it the best interview book ever because, like I said, I mean, I've gotten an offer from almost every job that I've interviewed at. So I do think it's at least one of the best interview books ever.
I completely agree with that. I refer my clients to it all of the time who are about to go through the interview process, because what I love about it is it not only is these examples, but you also break down the different types of interview questions in there. Like, you can understand that even if you're not preparing, you have done the impossible, Rob, of actually going down and tracking, I think, almost every interview question that can be asked. Most people haven't had the thought, especially the forethought early in their career, to do that, and can't necessarily, without your book, prepare for every single possible question. But what I love about what you've done is you've pointed out that there are types of interview questions that you can prepare for. Do you mind just talking us through a little bit about what those types are? Because I think they can be so helpful for anybody that's going through the interview process.
Yeah, I love that you called that out. And what was interesting to me as I was writing the book is, I started by going through all my questions, and I said, oh, actually, I think it would be helpful for readers to understand that every interview question, regardless of what the industry is, regardless of what the role is, actually falls into three different buckets. And there's a concept that I learned when I was a Marine Corps recruiter, the question behind the question, or the why behind the why. And so I believe that any interview question falls into three different buckets, and here's why they're asking that question. So bucket one is, can you do the job, right? If you're an accountant, are you good at Excel, right? Can you count? Right. If you're interviewing for a teaching position, can you present in front of people, right? Can you write a lesson plan? Can you actually just physically and mentally do the job that you're applying for? That's bucket one. Bucket two is actually, can you make the hiring manager's job easier? And I think this is where a lot of people, this is the bucket that surprises a lot of people, because you have to understand that in a corporate environment and in a corporate role, that interviewer sitting across the table from you, that interviewer, the hiring manager, they want you to make their lives easier. They're busy. Think about how busy you are. The hiring manager feels like they're just as busy, if not busier, right? So if you can convey, hey, I can save you time, or I can take things off your plate, I can do things that you're currently spending time on so that you don't have to worry about it, and I can make your life easier. That is a huge bonus during an interview to make sure that you get that offer, right? The third one is to be a little cheeky. Are you a big pain in the butt? Right? So you have to realize, and this goes along a little bit with bucket two, right? Because I have interviewed plenty of people when I was in corporate roles and I was hiring people for my team. And I just remember hearing some things that just sent a red flag to me that said, oh, this person kind of sounds like they're going to need a lot more hands-on or a lot more management or something like that. So you want to make sure that you convey, I'm easy to work with. I'm not going to be a problem with teammates. I get along with people. I'm not going to be an HR problem, things like that. Right.
Mhm.
So again, every question falls into one of those three buckets.
Yeah. And to your point, I think preparation is key, but even if you are going into an interview with no preparation, the bottom line thing that you want to do is ask yourself, what is the question behind the question? I think that's such an
Oh yeah.
insightful piece because if you can understand what they're trying to learn from you based on that question,
Oh
then
yeah.
you can craft the story that's going to actually have them hire you versus just staying on that surface level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up that sparks another point that I put in the book that I think is really important that a lot of people miss is that interviews are a two-way street, right? This is also your opportunity to figure out, do I want to work there? Do I want to work for this person? But also feel free to ask for clarification, right? I mean, if there's a question and you're curious why somebody is asking that question, I would ask that, right? I would
Yeah.
say, oh, that's interesting that you're asking that. Can you help me understand why you're asking that so I can give you an answer that fully answers the question? That's
Mhm.
very valid, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's a two-way street, and you want to make sure that you're answering that question behind the question. So feel free to ask for clarification during that process.
Yeah. I completely agree. When I started my career in recruiting, and honestly, I think I may have still been in recruiting, Rob, when we first started working together at
You are, yeah,
WWE. Yeah, I was saying so long ago at this point. Um, but truly, the interviews that I was always most impressed by when I was in that recruiting role were people who would come in and drive the conversation in the
yeah,
right direction, right? Like they already had a pretty good idea of what I wanted out of that. And
yeah,
I could do a lot more listening than having to prompt them into talking, but they weren't talking in circles about things that didn't matter, right? There's a
yeah.
big difference between coming in and being an active participant and driving in the right direction versus coming in and being all over the place. And I think your book really helps people to strike that balance in a very real way.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you brought that up, right? Because again, like I've just spoken to so many people and I try to mentor a lot of people on interview prep and they find it surprising when I tell them that this two-way street concept, because I think a lot of people go into interviews in sort of a passive, you're asking me questions and I'm answering and that's the way it is mindset. But part of asking those questions, like I said, is to make sure that you're uh, meeting the needs of the interviewer, right? So something that I always, always, always ask up front, or I always weave into a question as I'm answering. I ask questions about, what are your biggest pain points right now, right? You want to find that out from the hiring manager in the first 5 minutes because I will, once I have that answer and I know that the one or two things that are keeping them up at night, I weave in to the rest of the interview. This is how I'm going to solve that for you, right? So if
Love that.
you know that, I really drive that home, whether it's through my power story or just any other answer. I find a way to convey, I'm going to solve your problems.
Yeah, 100%. And asking the question in the first 5 minutes instead of saving all of your questions for the interviewer for the end.
Yes.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's no time. If you
Yeah.
ask it at, when you have 5 minutes left, there's no time for that.
No time whatsoever. And one of the things that you have alluded to, but I want to reiterate too, because I think until you're on the other side, you don't realize if you're the hiring manager, you're very invested in that interview process. The hiring
Oh
manager
yeah.
is usually one person that you interview with out of maybe an interview lineup of three, four, five other people. It's
Yeah.
very possible that those other people like are running into that interview conversation, looking at the resume on the way, and just
Yes.
aren't going to be invested the same way that a hiring manager is going to be invested. How can candidates approach interviews with folks who aren't the hiring manager that it's going to leave an impression when someone might be a little more distracted in the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So this happens all the time, and it's happened to me, right, as a hiring manager, where, oh, I have a 10:30 interview with Joe or Sally, and I had, I was booked from 9 to 10:30, right, and out of time. I saw the resume, I glanced over it, and I'm literally reading it as I'm walking to the to the interview, just to
Yeah.
remember who I'm talking to, right? So I would go back to part of what I was saying before about that. So first of all, the interview prep, right? You want to understand who is this person, what is their title, and what is their role in the organization, right? The hiring manager has decided that Joe or Sally is a good person to talk to you. Try to figure out why, right? So for me as a marketing professional, I would often get interviewed by the head of product, for example. And because I was a product manager, I know how product managers think. But even if you weren't, whatever that title is, try to figure out why has this person been selected to talk to me? What do I think is important to them, right? So for a product manager and me coming in as a VP of marketing, I'm assuming, oh, this person wants to know that I'm going to be easy to get along with, that I know how to write product requirements in a clear way, that I get along with others, because often, there can be some conflict between marketing teams and product teams, right? So I want this person to understand that, hey, I know my stuff, but I also know that I'm a sample size of one and I'm collaborative, right? I want your feedback if I'm designing a new landing page or something like that. So try to figure out why they're in that hiring process. That's number one. And number two, ask them, right? So in the first couple minutes of meeting somebody, I will weave in the question, or I'll just ask right off the bat, something to the effect of, oh, tell me how you work with the marketing team, right? Or tell me how you work with this team, or how would you and I work together, right?
Mhm.
That question usually gives me a ton of insight. And again, I will also ask that, what keeps you up at night? Because that answer from the head of product or the head of community is going to be different, or sometimes the same, but often very different from what the hiring manager has to say. And then tap into your experience, and all of your, many of your answers for the rest of the interview should weave in, here's how I'm going to make your life easier, head of product or head of community or head of whatever.
Mhm. I agree. I often think of interviewing as a little, not that I've ever surfed a day in my life, but I imagine what surfing is like. Like you have the technical skills going into it,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of in the moment shifting based on the conditions and what's happening. So I hear. Um,
Yes.
that's how I picture interviewing to be, and I think the people who do interviewing the best, that's the approach that they take. Question for you: so we've talked about the importance of
Yeah.
preparation. How can you prepare in a way that still leaves room for that in the moment decision making based on the conversations that are happening in the interview, so that you're not so rehearsed that you can't react to that information you're getting as input?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are two parts to the answer to that question. I think part one is, what I love about my questions document and what I love about the book is that it's incredibly comprehensive. So I'm at this point in my career, I'm very, very rarely caught off guard. Yeah, I mean, I'm consulting now. I'm not interviewing anymore for corporate roles, but I am interviewing for. I had an interview on Monday for a fractional CMO role, right? So uh, because I've prepared so much for so many years and used this document consistently, I am able to piece. If I get a question that is not in my document, I can piece together answers from different questions in my document and fully answer that question. Uh, I think also something that's very valid is, during an interview, if I get caught like that, I will sometimes say, give me 10 seconds to formulate the best possible answer here, and pull from my experience. And I'll take 5 seconds of silence. Totally fine, right? That's never hurt me before. And again, I'll just reiterate, I've gotten an offer from almost every interview process I've ever been. I mean, I've gotten offers for jobs that I absolutely was not qualified for, and eventually said, no, I don't think I can do this. Uh, Take 5 to 10 seconds, and I think that's totally valid. Uh, the other part, as far as not coming across as rehearsed, the way that I've created my document is, and written the answers out, is 100% in my voice. And also, I've tried to write those answers in a way that I would actually say it. So there's I'm using contractions. I will literally say the answer out loud and then type out exactly what I said, right? Because again, you don't want to come across as rehearsed, and that can come through, that you've got this pat answer. And if you do that, you have to be prepared for the follow up. So one of the cool things in the book that I've added in there is, you know, here's the question from the interviewer. Here's the what I think is the perfect answer. Then I will add, be prepared for these two questions that might be a follow up for you. So, in short, prepare as much as you can so you can pull answers from different sections, and also write out your questions in the same way that you would actually say it.
Mhm. I love that. One of the concepts that you talk about too, Rob, is this idea of a power story. I talk with my clients about their career hero story, and two
Yeah.
different versions of the same thing, right? Story plays such an important role in interviewing
Yeah.
well. Um, Talk to me about what you talk about in the book around the power story and how people can have their power story in their back pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say to folks listening right now is, if you've never heard of the concept of the hero's journey, Google it right now. Go down the rabbit hole. It's amazing. I mean, for a fantasy sci-fi nerd like me, it's awesome, right? So Star Wars, for example, is a perfect example of the hero's journey. And so the power story heavily borrows from the concept of the hero's journey, where, excuse me, you're I say in the book many, many times that human beings are hardwired to be attracted to stories. So if you can tell a story versus giving an answer, that's always going to help. And part of a story is the dragon, right? So the dragon is the problem, right? In Star Wars, it's the Empire, right? And things like that. You want to convey the problem. You want to convey, how did you feel once this problem was laid out in front of you. And then you want to talk about, another part of the hero's journey is, that initial feeling of, oh, maybe I can't do this, or this is a huge challenge, right? But then you want to talk about, how did I solve for this? What are the steps that I went through? Who helped me along the way, right? Who was your Obi-Wan Kenobi that helped you along the way? And then you want to get into, the outcome. What happened after, because you found a way to figure it out. The point of the power story is to convey to the hiring manager, this is why I'm so incredibly awesome, and you need to give me an offer like in the next 5 minutes, because you don't want to let me get away, right? It encapsulates everything about what makes you incredible. This is going to sound cocky or whatever. I firmly believe I am one of the best growth marketers on the planet. And that's not just blowing smoke. Like, my numbers show that. And I can tell you several power stories that show you and demonstrate, this is how I overcame this huge, huge dragon, right? And this is why you need to hire me, because nobody else can do this. My power story, the result, the end output of my power story is how I came up with a marketing campaign that ended up doubling subscribers for WrestleMania year over year for WWE Network. Very few other people on the planet can do that. I am absolutely convinced of that. And I have this whole story about how, I got pushed back on my campaign plan, and eventually broke through, and we were able to execute it. And here's this massive, massive result. So, what I tell people in the book is, come up with that power story. Figure out, what was this huge dragon in your career that you slayed because, you are the best accountant on the planet, or you're the best recruiter on the planet, right? And tell the story in that hero's journey arc, and that's your power story.
I absolutely love that. And I am going to say, if for anyone who is struggling to do that, because it's not the easiest thing to think about your day to day, particularly corporate job, and apply it to a hero's journey. But I do have a tool to help folks do that as well. I'll
Oh, nice.
do a link down below. It kind of breaks down the hero's journey pieces with some reflection questions to help people craft their own career hero story. So I'll put a link in this podcast for anybody who is in need of that, because that power story, as you share in the book, is key. And you mentioned having multiple of them, that can apply to many different questions, but you want to make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
you're always hitting on those. That's why people hire people.
Yeah.
Not because you could answer, tell me about yourself in the perfect way,
Right.
right? It's because you told that story.
Oh, 100%. And what's funny is, uh, even if nobody asks a question that is relevant, where delivering the power story is relevant, I tell it anyway. I find I just, I'll answer a question and then I'll transition in a way like, oh, that reminds me of this project I worked on at WWE, and I just tell the story, right? You want to tell that story no matter what, and if your story is good enough, nobody's going to care that you weren't actually answering a question. They're going to be on the edge of their seat thinking, tell me more. I have to hire this person.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I love that. Big fan of storytelling, particularly when it comes to the interview process. I want to transition us a little bit, if that's okay with you, Rob, because I think a lot of our listeners, one of the struggles is, how do I get to the interview process, right? We are in the tail end of a difficult market for candidates at this moment. We have challenges of AI on the
Yeah.
recruiting side. We have how people are navigating AI on the candidate side. We have a sluggish market. It's really been very difficult for people to get their foot in the door to interview. One of the things that I talk about with my clients is the importance of having a personal brand and to be able to get you into the conversations that can lead to interviews and having that network. You and your LinkedIn presence, I think, are one of the best examples of someone who is maximizing the potential of LinkedIn to be able to share your story in a very organic way, share your expertise in an organic way, and connect with people for the joy of connecting with them, not because you want something from them. So talk to me a little bit about your journey with LinkedIn and how you show up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I have found is that I think about marketing and growth in a way that's different from a lot of people. I think heavily influenced by that analytical side, and also, I went through an exercise with an executive coach about 2 years ago, and part of that engagement, we honed in on what are my personal values, and one of my five core values is helping others. And I've been mentoring people for years and years and years, people, in marketing, people in product and things like that. And maybe it's selfish, but it makes me feel good to help somebody out, right? And helping people find a job, or I have a very good friend now who, our relationship started out as a mentorship, and now I mean, we talk every week, and it's just a lot of fun to chat with her. But I love helping people with things that just come so easy for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they come easy for me because I've been a marketer for 20 plus years, right?
Yeah.
And so helping people is something that just feels good. So what I found on LinkedIn is, when I come out of these mentoring sessions, and I, some piece of information that I've given is really helpful, I'll post that on LinkedIn. Hey, if you're facing problem X, here's what I would do. Or here's what has worked for me in the past, and things like that. So I post quite a bit on LinkedIn, and especially about SaaS and subscription growth. I post about consulting and starting a business. I post about interview tips and things like that. I think especially in the market that we've been experiencing for the past while now, and certainly currently, one of the best feelings I have is somebody coming back to me and saying, "Hey, I used your book, or I used your Google questions, and I nailed the interview and I got the job," right? Because I've been in that position before. Right before WWE, I was out of work for, I mean, luckily it was only 4 weeks, but I didn't know it was only going to be 4 weeks. But I was out of work and stressed, and I had a baby daughter plus an older son, and it's incredibly stressful. So if I can help somebody with some of that content, nail that interview, that's awesome. What I've said to people before, and what I truly believe, I do a lot of reading in Stoic philosophy, and one of the core tenets of Stoic philosophy is what's good for the hive is good for the bee. And what that means to me is, if you have an opportunity to help other people, you should, right? And there's a quote from Spider-Man. Uncle Ben says, if you can help others, you have an obligation to do so. And I'm also a comic book nerd, and I follow Spider-Man philosophy. But yeah, it makes me feel good to do those things.
I love that. And I just want to add, because if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking like, well, that'd be great if I had a way of helping people, you do. I firmly believe every single person listening to this podcast right now has a unique value, has something that they can give. You just have to start giving it and figure out what that unique value is for yourself. But I promise you have it. Because
Yeah.
I know that's something I run into with my clients a lot of like, well, I don't have anything to say. And there's a story there. Trust me. You just have to find it.
Yeah, 100%. And what I have found interesting to that point in consulting is there there are uh, there are things in marketing that are unbelievably easy for me, that I didn't realize are incredibly hard for 99% of people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, something as simple as running Google Ads, right? Setting up campaigns, writing ad copy, setting up the right keywords. It is unbelievably easy for me to do that and get incredible results for people. There are so many people out there for whom Google Ads is just a complete mystery. It's Greek to them. They have no idea how to do it. And
Hi, I'm people.
I mean, right? It's just,
Yeah.
think about what I would say to the listeners, think about the cool things that you've done in your career that are just, think about what you're doing every single day, right? If I don't know, if you're an accountant, right? I mean, setting up a spreadsheet, that's hard for a lot of people, right? And it's, if you're a couple of years into your career, the things that you did in year one that are not hard for you in year five, find some people who are in year one right now, right? You can help them with some of the lessons that you have learned. And yeah, it's been a real surprise for me just learning how much I know, I guess.
Yeah. And, on that journey, because I know you started consulting on the side of a full-time job, right?
Yeah, correct.
So did consulting for you kind of come from this joy of helping people? And the next thing you know, you were a consultant?
It did actually. So what's funny is, I alluded to that executive coach that I was working with before. Uh, Once we did the exercise of finding my core values, one of which being helping others, the next part of that exercise was, okay, what career paths can align with those core values? And so, I love helping others. I love speed. I love variety. I love a challenge. And I just kept coming back to consulting as a career path, because I figured it would, and it certainly has offered me all of those opportunities to really live out those core values. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, a lot of ups and downs, but overall up, which has been great. And yeah, just really allows me to live out those core values. I mean, I'm happier than I've ever been.
I love that. That's the cornerstone of probably all of my coaching programs is coming up with what is your unique value. And in our Determine Your Direction program, I think follows a very close path to what you just mentioned around how do you take that value and figure out what career do you want, what do you want to do? What do you want to give
Yeah.
in this world, to find that career path for yourself and to be able to do that. But it's so hard to do that when you haven't done the work of figuring out what that unique value is. It sounds like that was exactly your experience.
Yeah, 100%. Right. And what you just described reminds me of some of the paths that I take consulting clients down, where they want to go, they want to do stuff, and almost every founder and CEO that I've spoken to in the last 2 years has said to me some form of the statement, "We don't have a strategy. We're just trying lots of things." Right. And, my thought is, well, that's your first problem. Stop trying lots of things and let's create a strategy together. And what you just described, Kelly, I think is a perfect example of, let's do some introspection. Let's figure out the strategy first. Then we prioritize a list of things to try and then execute. Right. Yeah. Let's do it from a base of strategy and rigorous thinking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And we're so hesitant, I think, to apply that kind of strategy to our own lives and passions and career paths, because one, we're busy, and because we're doing this and everything else that we're doing and trying to keep all of these balls in the air. But I think you're a perfect example of what happens when you take that step back and really identify for yourself, what is it that I want to do? How am I going to get there? And take action that supports that career strategy in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand how somebody can think or feel like taking that step back is a real step back, and I don't want to pause, I want to go. One of the sayings we have in the military is slow is fast. And what that means to me is take the time for that careful strategic planning so that you can execute faster later. And because you're doing that, overall, you're moving faster and you're moving in the right direction, right? Because doing lots of things all over the place, it doesn't get you where you want to go in the time frame that you're looking for. You have to have that strategy. You have to do that introspection and figure out that plan first.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Rob, if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on to talk a little bit about how you can utilize consulting as a tool for helping you build a career that you love, whether it's alongside a corporate job, whether it ends up being your full-time passion. I think you and I could probably go a whole other 90 minutes just on that topic.
I would love that. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. This has been great.
Great. Well, Rob, how can people find your book? How can people follow you on LinkedIn? Where is the place to find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is definitely the place to find me. I have it open constantly and always going back and forth with people. So find Rob Levin on LinkedIn. And also for my book, go to bestinterviewbook.com or find me on LinkedIn, and I'll direct you to the right place.
All right. You must be a marketer with that. You knew that domain was going to be available, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Rob, thank you so much for taking the time for joining the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. This was so much fun. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me on today's episode. As always, if you're looking for coaching, support, or would like to submit a question, you can drop me an email at info@yourplaceatthetop.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review so this podcast can find its way to other amazing listeners just like you.